Good morning, this is Business Live with me, Paul Kelso. It's the end of an era in South Wales today, with the UK's biggest steelworks to cease production after more than 100 years. Blast Furnace 4, the final furnace operating in Port Talbot, will be fully shut down later today, leading to thousands of job losses. Tata Steel is replacing the furnace with a greener electric arc furnace, but that won't be operational until 2028. Now, our correspondent Dan Whitehead is in Port Talbot for us this morning. Dan, this has been long signalled, long expected, but it's still going to land very, very hard for the town and the workforce in South Wales today.
Yeah, we've spent the last few weeks in and around Port Talbot speaking to steel workers, speaking to the businesses who are going to be impacted, and you can really feel this, the sadness and the atmosphere here this morning. I've just come from a cafe down the road which says that it probably won't last the year. It will have to shut down. That impact being felt not just amongst the several thousand workers who are losing their jobs, but the wider supply chain as well. Today, the Blast Furnace 4, as you mentioned, will shut down at around 5 o'clock, the very last steel being made tonight after more than 100 years. We've had a statement in the last couple of minutes from Tata Steel. Let me just bring you some of that. This is from Rajesh Nair, the CEO of Tata Steel UK, saying today marks a significant event in the history of iron and steel making in the UK as the legacy steel making assets at Port Talbot close, having reached their end of life. It is important at this juncture to pause and recognise and credit the huge contribution of the many thousands of people and the technologies that have sustained our industry and communities here for generations. That statement will come as little comfort to the thousands of people who are losing their jobs. Let's have a chat with the union representing most of those steel workers. Alan Davis is the National Steel Officer at the Community Union. Alan, thanks for joining us down here. Look, this is a sad day, and one that your union has said is a missed opportunity in that it didn't have to be this way.
It didn't have to be that way, and I just listened to what you said about what Rajesh Nair had said in his communication. It's not an end of life, it's an early end of life by Tata Steel. We know that that blast furnace had till 2032. We put alternatives in place, but the company didn't want to look at it, saying it was it wasn't cost effective.
The unions have fought for months and years to extend the life of that blast furnace. You believed actually that the redundancy level of some 2,500 could have been far lower?
It would have been a lot lower. It would have been 700, which we could have managed through people wanting to retire early, but now we're having people thrown onto the scrap heap.
The electric arc furnace will be operational, Tata say, by late 2027, early 2028. What is your understanding on the numbers of staff who will be needed to keep that operational? Significantly fewer, I presume.
About 10% of what we're losing today, around about 200 people. That is what you'll need. So out of the heavy end going today, you'll lose 2,000 or 1,900, and only 200 to be kept.
We've been speaking to not only those direct staff who've lost their jobs, but the consultants as well, the wider contractors, sorry, who have had to find jobs. Actually, far more people are impacted in this town, aren't they?
You're 100% correct. We've been saying for a long time the contractors have been like the forgotten population. 1,700 of them have already gone, and they're on statutory terms, most of them, for redundancy, not the enhanced ones that Tata have got. But even so, it's still a bitter pill to swallow for anybody to be made redundant the way they're being made.
Tata Steel say that this new electric arc furnace will cut the emissions here at Port Talbot by 90%. There's no denial that there has to be a greener future in the steel industry. The government, the new Labour government, says that it's going to publish this steel strategy, the future of steel, because it's not just at Port Talbot. You look at similar closure plans up at Scunthorpe. What do you as a union want to see in the government's strategy out next spring?
Well, we've been calling for procurement, large infrastructure projects to be supplied by British-made steel for shipbuilding, for our national security. That needs to be made by steel made in Britain. The problem is we've lost one of the plants now that can create the virgin steel, and we're only left now with one up in Scunthorpe. So we're in a bad place at the moment.
Alan, thanks for chatting to us. You can hear it from Alan there. This is an emotional day. It is a sad day. You can feel it on the high street, in the shops, amongst the workers here who are carrying out their last shift. And although that electric arc furnace is coming, it is 4 years away, and until then there are a lot of people who are worried about how they're going to cope in a town that was built on steel that can no longer make it.
Thanks, Dan. I know you'll bring us more on the real-world consequences of the closure in Port Talbot as the day goes on. Now, in another sign of the UK's accelerating energy transition, Britain's only remaining coal power plant at Ratcliffe-on-Soar in Nottinghamshire is also closing its doors today. The plant is shutting after 57 years, bringing to an end the UK's long history of coal power. Now, joining me now is Emma Champion, Head of Regional Energy Transitions at the research organisation Bloomberg NEF. Good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. What does today, and perhaps the coincidence of these two closures, both at Port Talbot and Ratcliffe-on-Soar, tell us about the reality of the energy transition we've been talking about for a long time, but now we're seeing it happen in real time?
Yes, of course. So with the closure of Ratcliffe and indeed the steelworks at Port Talbot today, the UK has successfully phased out coal from its electricity supply mix. Today really marks the moment where the UK becomes the first member of the G7 to phase out coal power. That follows events from earlier in the year when G7 energy ministers agreed to end the use of unabated coal plants by 2025. In many ways, this really isn't a surprise to anyone in the industry today that the UK has phased out coal electricity supply. That phase-out date has been in place for a number of years now, and there were a steady stream of measures that were put in place to drive that outcome. We had emissions limits put in place for coal plants, carbon pricing, a capacity market to ensure that the UK had sufficient security of electricity supply, and of course the mandated coal phase-out date. So it's a combination of measures that have brought this today, and really an important moment, I think, in the UK's energy transition.
Is there a danger the UK pays a price, though? We're seeing the closure of the plant at Port Talbot. We know the UK has very high industrial energy prices. Coal always provided the intensity of power that industry likes. Clearly it had to go, but is there a danger that industry pays a price in this transition?
I think, honestly, a lot of these coal plants were approaching the end of their economic lifetime anyway, so they did need to be replaced by something else. And we have to remember that the UK has also already built a sizable gas power plant fleet before transitioning away from coal. And there have been a number of other measures, including, of course, direct subsidies for renewables that have helped cushion that switch. So I wouldn't say it's an uneconomic outcome that we've transitioned away from coal at this moment in time. And we also know that the new government is now putting in place even more ambitious measures, especially for scaling up technologies like wind and solar, which at BNEF we know are some of the cheapest sources of new build generation in the UK. So it's even now cheaper to build those new sources than it is to run some of the existing gas fleet. So we'll continue to see hopefully more economic outcomes and cheaper megawatt hours for consumers as that transition continues to unfold.
And how convinced are you by those plans? Because we know we have the gift of abundant wind power when the wind blows in the North Sea, but it's going to need to be underpinned. Gas-fired power stations, nuclear of replaced coal is underpinning that. But how convinced are you by this government and the next few that will be required to see this transition through will be able to pull off the balance so we can keep attracting industries and retain a manufacturing base that's driven by British power?
Of course, yeah. The scale-up of renewables is now going to be the pivotal driver of whether the UK can now transition away from gas as it transitioned away from coal. And that clean power system by 2030 goal that was in the Labour Party manifesto is a seriously ambitious target. We know that they have a very clear focus on wind and nuclear with very ambitious targets. I think the offshore wind and onshore wind targets combined amount to nearly 95 gigawatts by 2030. So from a market perspective, that's a really good sign for industry. The offshore wind sector has been thriving in the UK for a number of years now, but we do at BNEF expect the government to likely fall short of those goals. We only expect around 34 gigawatts of offshore wind to be built in the UK by 2030. That's 25 gigawatts short of the government manifesto target. And the reason for that is quite simple. It takes a long time to build those assets, particularly scaling out the transmission grid and supply chain, things that need to be in place to scale that up. But the government is moving in the right direction. They've already started to increase the ambition of important things like our renewable energy auctions that help to drive new build. We just had a very successful round in the summertime here. So things are looking in the right direction that they can bridge that gap, but there may be a 1 or 2 year overshoot.
Emma Champion, thank you for those insights.
Thank you.
Some other stories now. House prices saw their fastest annual rise for 2 years in September, according to Nationwide. Falling mortgage rates meant the average property rose in value by an annual rate of 3.2%. Economists had been expecting a rise of 2.7%. The economy grew by less than expected in April to June. GDP expanded by 0.5%, below the expected figure of 0.6%. However, the Office for National Statistics did offer some reprieve to the Chancellor as Britain's household savings ratio increased to 10% in the second quarter. GDP per head rose for a second quarter in a row. Rightmove has rejected a fourth takeover proposal from Rupert Murdoch's REA Group in Australia. The UK's biggest online property portal said the latest offer, valuing it at around £6.2 billion, continued to undervalue the company and called on REA to make its best and final proposal by 5 o'clock this afternoon or walk away. Let's take a look at the markets, and stocks continue to soar in Asia, but the Nikkei is having a bad day due to fears of rising interest rates in Japan. European markets opened this morning relatively unchanged after a strong couple of weeks following that Chinese stimulus package, although the latest numbers, you can say, are all in the red, down by 1.5% at the most or more. Here in London, the FTSE has opened slightly on the downside, down 0.47%. We can see there Rio Tinto continues to extend its gains from last week, up by 0.9%. You can see there. And Rightmove shares are trading down following that refusal of the fourth takeover offer from Rupert Murdoch's REA Group. The budget airline EasyJet, we can see there, also giving back some of last week's gains this morning. Outside the FTSE, the Ocado is in the top 10 of European gainers. Onto the foreign exchange markets, and the pound, we can see, is currently trading up a little against the dollar and the euro also in positive territory against the dollar. And finally, a barrel of Brent crude will set us back $71.73 this morning for a barrel. Now, joining me now is Russ Mould, Investment Director at AJ Bell. Russ, shall we start with the Rightmove news and this Murdoch-backed company? I understand it's more the child of Lachlan Murdoch than his father, Rupert. But Rightmove have not backed this offer. Do they think there's more money on the table here?
Good morning, Paul. I think the shareholders will certainly be demanding that, and Rightmove's board will be demanding that if the News Corporation-backed vehicle is to succeed. As you say, 4 bids have gone in. The offer price has gone from 698p to 781p, and the Rightmove board will just refuse to engage. So I suspect there are two things here. One, either the percentage of cash needs to go up, because that's been broadly flat at around 45% of the offer price, and the rest of it's been stock and special dividends, and or the actual total value needs to go up, probably beginning with an 8 rather than with a 7, I suspect. And unless we get that at 5 o'clock today, you assume the deal is dead, and that's maybe 1 or 2 people are taking a bit of profit today just in case.
Yeah, that's a slightly parochial single company stock story. The bigger picture, out of China this morning, we've seen the equity markets soaring. This related, it would appear, to big moves by the Chinese government to try and revive the economy. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in the UK, Rachel Reeves would be thrilled if we were to get 5% GDP growth this year. But clearly in China, that's been a disappointing number for some time, and they're struggling perhaps even to meet that. So you've had some big changes, interest rate cuts, reductions in amounts of capital that banks have to hold so they can lend more, and changes to down payments for mortgages and new properties to try and get China out of that sort of commercial, the residential real estate bust it's been struggling in. There are also other big reforms coming to land ownership potentially. So China is trying to get the economy accelerating. And if you're looking at that's having a knock-on effect on the copper price, the iron ore price, for example, and that's helping the miners here in London. And as you say, the broader Chinese stock market, that's up by nearly a fifth in the past week, in fact. Intriguingly, the one thing that's not benefited is oil. So not everybody's clearly completely convinced yet.
And staying in Asia, we've had the opposite story in Japan. Also, we saw the Nikkei struggling. Looks like that's also a consequence of political moves.
Yeah, we've got the new leader of the Liberal Democratic Party, the LDP, Shigeru Ishiba. He won that at the 5th attempt, so you could argue he was a bit of an old guard candidate potentially. Previously, he's been campaigning for higher corporate taxes, higher taxes on investment gains to try and help Japan plug its massive fiscal deficit, which is more than 200% of GDP. You know, we're fretting at about a figure of around 100% here in the UK. He's also backed the Bank of Japan's plans to raise monetary policy after years of zero or negative interest rates to try and, quote, normalise policy, and that's driven the yen up, and that's its exporters' share. So the Nikkei was down around 5% this morning. He has slightly backtracked over the weekend, talking about looser monetary policy may not be such a bad thing, and a lot of it will now depend on his choice of cabinet, but also whether he calls a snap election. There are rumours of an election may be called at the end of the month to help him cement his position, not just as LDP leader, but Prime Minister, because the main opposition party, they've also just appointed a new leader, Yoshihiko Noda, and he didn't really cover himself in glory when he was PM just about a decade ago.
Russ Mould, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks as ever for your time this morning. There's some breaking news now from the Middle East from our colleagues at NBC. An Israeli official has told NBC News that it's launching small special forces operations into southern Lebanon ahead of a potential ground offensive. The operations are designed to gather intelligence and probe Hezbollah's positions. The official cautioned that such operations have been going on for months and do not necessarily signal the imminent start of a ground assault. That from our colleagues at NBC. Still to come on Business Live, why Currys is calling on consumers to repair, not replace, their tech. I'll be joined by its chief executive.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Independent United Kingdom.
These last few years have seen some huge stories. And these stories have been driven by politics, by politicians, the people in power.
You must stay at home.
And it's my job to figure out how these decisions made by politicians impact all of us in our everyday lives.
This is the worst thing I've ever been through in my life.
People turn up here with their child stuff in a black sack and just say, I don't want to.
And that is what it is. It's first-class poverty.
Is this an example of the welfare state failing?
We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world.
These are stories that affect us all. Millions of children are now having to catch up. Some stories have changed all of our lives. Because like the residents, the staff are being infected. Politicians, they make decisions all of the time, and it's our job to hold them to account.
I wonder if you will take this opportunity to apologise to those families.
But in the end, the real power doesn't actually lie with the politicians. The real power lies with the people. I'm Nick Martin. I'm the People and Politics correspondent at Sky News.
I say, bring it on.
With America divided and tensions running high, get ready for an election like no other.
Join our teams as we follow the campaign trail as America decides.
We will win, win, win.
Get closer to the action this US election with full reaction and analysis.
Sky News, the full story first.
If you forgot your pajamas, Emirates has got you covered. Fly Emirates, fly better.
Now, consumer confidence has taken a tumble in the UK in recent weeks, with doom and gloom surrounding the economy ahead of next month's budget. In a moment, I'll get the thoughts on that from the chief executive of the electrical retailer Currys. The company has launched a campaign today to get people to repair, not replace, their electrical goods. It says the British public is currently spending £9 billion a year on replacing faulty tech. And joining me is Alex Baldock, the chief executive of Currys. Alex, this sounds like a counterintuitive pitch from an electrical retailer not to buy new stuff. Explain.
Well, you're not wrong, Paul, in one sense. And Currys certainly doesn't intend to stop selling lots of shiny new kit to consumers, but we want to be every bit as famous for repairing the kit that customers already have. The demand's already there. We've repaired 1.4 million mobile phones, laptops, washing machines and other devices last year. And you can understand why. I mean, in the cost of living crisis, replacing sometimes expensive technology when customers are strapped for money is difficult. So it's good for customers' pockets. It's obviously good for the planet if technology has longer life. But to the heart of your question, it's good for our profits too. We believe that purpose and profit must go hand in hand, and repair is good business for us as well as doing the right thing.
Does it reflect, and you've mentioned there, the cost of living, does it reflect, I mentioned consumer confidence, and that slight uncertainty that's followed what little afterglow there was for the new government from the election? Are you seeing consumer interest dipping away in line with what the surveys tell us?
Well, our interest in repairs predates any ups and downs in consumer confidence, Paul, in any 1 month. I mean, we've got 12 million repair customers and have built Europe's largest repair centre in Newark with over 1,000 colleagues doing all of this. So we've been committed to this for some time. Now, you ask about consumer confidence right now. It is a bit bumpy. I mean, it has generally been trending up 22 of the last 24 months, we think. But we're not depending as a business on a recovery in consumer sentiment to hit our promises. We're confident of continuing the strong positive start that we've made to this year and growing profits and cash this year without any tailwind from a more confident consumer. And as you say, that's pretty bumpy at the moment.
I'll ask you another question about government policy, if I may. You employ 25,000 people, make great play of the importance of your staff to the proposition, and we see them feature prominently in your advertising. The government's working on a series of workers' rights reforms that big employers, I understand, are pushing back a little at. What's your view of what the new government has in mind in extending rights, first-day employment rights, of particular concern, I know, to some of your peers across industry?
Yeah, I mean, our view is the same as our trade association, the BRC, and we've been pretty consistent throughout. I think it's really important that the government consult on these proposals, as they've shown themselves willing to do, and there needs to be some balance in them too. Clearly, what nobody wants is any proposals that restrict our appetite or ability to hire, because, as you point out, retail is a massive employer. We've got 3 million jobs that we account for in this country. We pay £17 billion of tax. I mean, a healthy retail sector needs to be at the heart of the economic recovery. So proposals need to be balanced as well as well-intentioned. And we're working with other retailers as part of the BRC to make sure that that's the case.
Just returning to the repair campaign you're launching today, there'll be people watching this who might be, me included, who might be thinking obsolescence is built into a lot of the cheaper tech we buy, or should we call it affordable tech. Can much of what you sell actually be effectively repaired, or are we better off binning it despite our concerns about the planet?
Well, I mean, 40% of customers would agree with you, because our survey suggests that 40% of people think that their tech can't be repaired. Our experience is different. Over 90% of the tech that comes into Europe's largest tech repair centre that we've got in Newark, over 90% of it we can repair, which is why we're launching this campaign. I mean, we're already pretty big in repair. We want to be bigger. We want to help the UK consumer save many thousands more pounds each by repairing more of their technology. We want to see more of it come in please take us up on our challenge, because we think we can do an even bigger and better job for the British consumer, and of course help the planet and our profits while we're doing it.
And where are we now? Just at the end of September, October tomorrow. How long will it be before we see your next campaign encouraging us to spend, to replace, to buy new again ahead of Christmas?
Oh, well, that's going on right now. I mean, like I say, we're not about to stop losing interest in selling customers shiny new kit. For us, the repair and selling shiny new kit can go hand in hand, and they do. So we're big in both. I mean, we serve over 80% of UK households. We've got, as you point out, a peak trading period coming up where we're going to be encouraging customers to pop into their local Currys to see all of their gifting needs met this Christmas. We're going to be doing that at the same time as we help save the hard-pressed British consumer many thousands of pounds.
Alex Baldock at Currys, thanks for your time. I'll stop you there. That's it from me for the moment. I'll be back this afternoon with the edition of Business Live at 4:30. We'll see you then.